The Myth of the Angry Atheist by John H. Most myths and stereotypes have at least some basis in reality, and it is clear, even to the casual observer, that some portion of self-identified atheists, including this one, exhibit what can be misidentified on the surface as an aggressive superior attitude. This perception can be particularly problematic in AA, where its 12 traditions call out for consensus, solidarity, and above all, AA unity. An AA Traditions checklist published by the Grapevine in 1971, which I had read long ago, recently came my way once again in connection with a group conscience meeting, and the following 6 points from the discussion of Tradition 1 on AA unity caught my eye. 1. Am I, in my group, a healing, mending, integrating person, or am I divisive? What about gossip and taking other members' inventories? 2. Am I a peacemaker, or do I, with pious preludes such as, just for the sake of discussion, plunge into an argument? 3. Am I gentle with those who rub me the wrong way, or am I abrasive? 4. Do I make competitive AA remarks, such as comparing one group with another, or contrasting AA in one place with AA in another? 5. Do I put down some AA activities as if I were superior for not participating in this or that aspect of AA? And finally, 6. Am I informed about AA as a whole? Do I support in every way I can AA as a whole, or just the parts I understand and approve of? As with most everything in AA that relates to the practical, day-to-day conduct of group affairs, as opposed to the purely religious stuff erroneously identified as spiritual, there is a great deal of wisdom in these particular suggestions, and I found myself squirming a bit in my chair as I read them the other day for the first time in many years. Despite the emotional resonances engendered by this traditional AA even-handedness and emphasis on consensus, people in our wing of the fellowship, of all shades between atheism and agnosticism, always need to be aware that what is stated on the surface is often laced with multiple meanings not necessarily of benefit to people who hold alternative views. This is especially true when you hold firm views, such as the hardcore militant atheism I espouse, that might be misconstrued as divisive just because they and you exist. Our founders placed a high premium in the construction of the 12 steps and the narrative in the big book on AA as a leveling factor in an alcoholic's life, leading to a boiling down of the ego-driven drinker to the lowest, most common denominator, worker among workers status. This was designed, initially, to be certain we got on our knees and stayed there. A few of us, like the late great James Burwell, resisted these tendencies from the beginning and went their own way while making accommodations and living with compromise as a way of life, being quite aware of their own lack of alternatives in terms of the healing of their alcoholism. There were no We Agnostics meetings in 1939, and Burwell and his fellow New York City and D.C. non-believers did magnificent service in mitigating some of the harsher Oxford Group-inspired realities we still deal with today. While we live in a different age that is far more open and transparent than the 1930s and 40s, there are still ingrained strings of societal and, of particular concern here, of course, structural AA prejudices aimed at marginalizing or even converting people like myself. When a long-term non-believer is identified as an atheist, the attitudes of some fellow members, even some of these so-called free thinkers who I just can't seem to figure out, harden, and an oppositional reality presents itself. It's at that point that the eyes narrow on both sides of this divide and problems ensue. I have been observing this within the fellowship for nearly 29 years now, and sadly, things don't seem to be getting any better over time. It is for this reason that I am attempting, in this piece, to now articulate from my own point of view as strictly confined to my own study and observations, a few things that we atheists are and are not within the context of AA. The atheist does not have a creed or axe, despite some misconstrued evidence to the contrary, to grind. The perception of others in this regard comes, I believe, from the impatience engendered in the mind and temperament of some of my fellow atheists in having to deal with the purest forms of irrationality on a day-to-day basis. Since it is a chronic inflammation that is not going away, it needs to be managed just like any other serious condition. But sometimes, despite our best efforts, the frustration comes out and we tell you the truth. That is just the way some of us are. The atheist, at least this one, does not want to leave AA, threaten it, or form an alternative movement. We don't lead movements or holy wars. We do tend to demand respect for who and what we are. This creates reactions in others who fail to see the paradox and wonder inherent in our condition and the nearly infinite variability in the ways people recover. If you happen to think that there is one single path to recovery, then, on the face of it, the position of the atheist is going to be perceived as a threat, and any expression of same as aggressive. There is no such thing as a magic elixir. Many folks are threatened by that position and look for mitigating psychological formulas and spiritual principles that many atheists personally deny. We don't deny that such things work for you. Some of us do say that such things have no basis in reality and happily take the consequences in terms of being labeled divisive. We also tend to continually rely on the proposition that the only requirement for membership is the desire to stop drinking, and expect the same from the rest of the membership. The fact that some of us insist on that point from time to time is also misunderstood. Within the confines of the conventional program, any sort of declarative statement of skepticism or non-belief, even when calmly stated, and combined with this insistence on one of the primary tenets of AA, is often perceived as being oppositional. This atheist is far more concerned with the integrity of his belief than the fallacy of yours. Atheism also renders many sacred truths irrelevant, and therefore is erroneously confused with a lack of a moral center. In the 27-plus years I have been attending our We Agnostics meeting here in Washington, which is heavily, though not exclusively, atheist, I haven't noticed such a lack. On the contrary, I have seen great love, service, and charity exhibited over and over, and strong bonds, along with decades of happy, sober living, form that would have been impossible elsewhere for many of us. Integrity, love, service, along with an occasional voice raised in frustration. exponentially more love than anger there. Some, not all, do speak our mind with few, if any, filters, which sometimes can be perceived as not the AA way. Atheists are prone to ask difficult questions while in pursuit of the truth they see. They tend to be persistent in the pursuit of fact. Many, but not all, have a high level of educational achievement, and it is not coincidental that artistic, scientific, and technical disciplines in particular tend to be heavily populated with us when compared to other segments of society. The firm statement of a purely individual belief can be easily confused with aggression. This is a real problem that needs to be addressed in our dealings with the fellowship at large without compromising core beliefs. We are what we are and pay a price for it, both inside and outside the fellowship. Not all AA atheists are angry old white men. This is rather amusing considering that I'm 66, male, and of old French Protestant and Hungarian Magyar Protestant ancestry. I'm also still, obviously, even after all this time, visibly agitated, impatient, and distressed by some of what I hear being expressed within AA. Despite being guilty as charged, I have been exposed to many people in AA of atheist belief who defy my own stereotypical profile and have a surprisingly calm demeanor. Some of us are actually rather quiet. We really are all kinds, as I indicated in a previous article, The Importance of Diversity, that was published on AA Agnostica. AA Diversity, when I described my abiding friendship with the late Gaston N., who, as an African-American activist, was one of the strongest members of our atheist AA tribe I have ever met. Likewise, the current composition of our DC group has a high concentration of women, as well as a very evenly distributed age group between the late 20s and people well into their 8th decade. We really do take in all kinds, with personality types ranging from mild to wild, and everything in between. We are mixed, just like any other fellowship group is by both chance and circumstances. There's nothing mysterious about us. All this said, following a party line, be it generated at the conventional group level or by so-called centralized organizational structures of non-believers, or by the AA General Service Office, is, in general, not our thing. In the absence of clear, well-defined, rational ideas, we occasionally lose our patience. This can lead the less than well-informed to sum us up as malcontented victims of an angry mindset who lack that paramount AA value known as serenity, which is often equated with sobriety itself and the quality thereof. In 1966, a patron saint of mine, long before his religious conversion in the late 1970s, put it best when he quite aptly, for us, said, "But to live outside the law, you must be honest. I know you always say that you agree." And that's what we quite simply are trying to do. Live by our own lights in our own way, without threats, without timidity, with a bit of courage and a considerable amount of tenacity. As I indicated earlier, we atheists are not the repository of any mysteries or secret handshakes. We really aren't a threat. Just look at us as the scientists of the spirit. We aren't angry, just determined. About the author. John H. is one of the founding members of the We Agnostics group in Washington, D.C., that has been meeting continuously for over 27 years. After a career of worldwide travels that involved stints residing overseas, John now lives with his wife in Bethesda, Maryland. other articles by John H. History of the D.C. We Agnostics AA group, which can be found on WEFT Central, dated June 27, 2015. The following articles are all on AA Agnostica. Back to Basics and Other Threats to AA, dated May 17, 2015. The Importance of Diversity, dated April 5th, 2015. And Coming Out as an Atheist in Conventional AA, dated March 1, 2015. The original print version of this article, The Myth of the Angry Atheist by John H., may be found on the website aabeyondbelief.com in the Personal Stories section, dated November 15, 2015. The audio version of this article was produced December 23, 2015.